They chained her on stage until a rancher said, "My son needs you." Before we start the story, leave a comment telling us which city you're watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. Cinder Creek, New Mexico Territory, July 1878. The sun pressed down like an anvil, turning dust to powder, and men's tempers mean. The center of town had been given over to a makeshift platform, a rough-hewn stage thrown together from wagon boards. A crowd pressed close, half drunk on cheap whiskey, half drunk on cruelty. It wasn't a fair day nor a cattle drive. This was spectacle. Chained at the wrists stood Lena Caldwell, 22, her cream dress torn to rags, her bare feet cut from the walk to the platform. The shackles had already cut her skin raw, but her posture didn't bend. She held her chin-high eyes, the green of bottle glass under flame, sharp enough to cut the leering stares below her. Men hooted, clapped, and whistled, demanding she smile. Instead, she spat at the boards. The announcer, slurring from whiskey, bellowed property of Caldwell the Elder. Gambling debt due. Healthy stock. Stubborn, but that can be broken. Laughter thundered, yet Lena's voice cut through the din like an iron blade. "You may chain my body, but you'll never own my soul." A ripple of unease passed through the crowd. One man in a brown hat climbed the stage and struck her, drawing blood at her lip. She lifted her chin higher and smiled, not sweetly, but like steel refusing the hammer. From the back, a voice broke the roar. $20. The crowd turned to see Randall Pike, owner of the largest cattle spread in the territory, swagger forward, boots polished, vest lined with gold thread. He looked Lena up and down like a cut of meat. "She'll do. I'll even throw in a ring, though she won't need it. I'll teach her obedience." The mob cheered. Near the edge of the street, a boy of 6 clutched a carved wooden horse, staring at the woman in chains. He tugged the hand of his father, Jack Mercer. Widowed, grizzled, once known as a deadly gunslinger, now just a rancher trying to raise a boy in silence. The child's voice was a whisper. She looked sad like Mama before she left. Jack's jaw worked. He hadn't planned to step forward, but he did. Boots thudded against dry earth as the crowd parted. He climbed the steps and set a single gold coin on the platform edge. $1. The mob howled with laughter. Pike sneered. "She's worth 10 times that." Jack's voice carried steady low. "I'm not buying her. I'm bringing her home because my boy needs her more than I do." Lena stared. He didn't leer. He didn't touch her. He only stood shoulders, square hands loose by his side. For the first time that day, her jaw trembled. That evening, the wagon rattled toward the Mercer Ranch, 2 miles west. The sky burned ambergrass, brittle as straw. The house was weathered, the porch sagging silence heavier than wood. Jack freed Lena's wrists, the iron gone, but the mark still red. He carried no pride in it, no ownership. "You'll have the guest room," he said. Privacy. Inside, the air smelled of smoke and lavender long faded. A boy peeked from behind a doorframe, Theo shaggy-haired, clutching a frayed stuffed horse. His hollow eyes stared before vanishing again. Jack set Lena's small bundle down. He doesn't talk, not since his mother passed. That night she ate at the table across from Jack, both hands wrapped around the bowl. Silence as tight as shackles. At last, he said quietly, "You ain't a prisoner here. You can leave when you want. But until then, this is your home." Her gaze lifted wary. "You rescue every woman auctioned on a stage." "You're the first," Jack answered without humor. Days trickled past like ghosts. Lena swept fixed loose boards, hauled water. She moved like a woman wearing borrowed skin. Theo lingered in doorways, watching with the silence of a child who had already seen too much. On the fourth morning, a bundle sat on the porch, bread-dried apples, a note in shaky hand. A woman is not to be sold. She is to be loved. Signed, only Agnes. Lena's throat tightened. It was the first kindness she had seen in months. That evening she sat near the hallway, watching Theo bite a fire-wooden horse in his lap. She cleared her throat. "Do you want me to fix him? His legs are loose." He hugged it tighter, shook his head. She softened her voice. "I had one too. Her name was Sadie. She was missing an eye, but she always knew when I was sad." Theo didn't answer, but his shoulders eased. In the kitchen, Jack asked, "How's he doing?" "He's grieving," Lena replied softly, just quieter than most. Jack nodded once. "You don't have to stay." "I know," Lena said, eyes steady, "but the quiet here, it doesn't hurt the way it did back there." And so in a house haunted by silence, something fragile began to breathe. The days crept along like shadows across the plains, slow, silent, always carrying weight. For Lena Caldwell, the Mercer Ranch was no palace of safety, but neither was it the stage in Cinder Creek. Here, at least, there were walls without laughter, silence without shackles. Still she moved, as if waiting for the ground to give way beneath her feet. Each morning she rose before dawn, washed the soot-stained dress that barely held together, and tied her hair back. She mended what she could, patched a torn quilt, swept dust from warped floorboards, fetched water from the well, with hands still sore from iron cuffs. Jack Mercer never demanded it. He didn't ask her to labor, didn't bark orders. Yet she worked anyway, for idleness felt like drowning. Theo lingered always at the edge of sight, a small shadow slipping down hallways, peeking from behind doors. His toy horse clicked across the floor as he dragged it, a whisper of a life that had stopped short. He hadn't spoken since his mother's death. His silence was not shyness, but stone. One afternoon, Lena caught his gaze through a cracked doorway. He vanished instantly, but she had seen the hollowness there, the same emptiness she once carried. It made her chest ache in ways she hadn't let herself feel in years. That night, over stew, Jack broke the silence. "You don't have to do all this," he said, nodding toward the patched curtain she had rehung. Lena didn't look up. "What else am I good for?" His eyes lingered on her, roughened by years of sun and grief. "You're not here to earn your keep. You're here because a boy needed you." The words stung more than they soothed. She thought of New York, of Edwin Langford, the man with polished shoes and empty promises. He had showered her with poems, pendants, whispered lies. Until the day before the wedding, when she discovered the truth, already married, using her as a pawn in some backroom wager. His laugh still echoed in her bones. "You're not the kind men marry Lena. You're the kind they practice on." She had fled penniless, broken, a woman without place or worth. Now, watching Jack stir his stew in silence, she wondered if any man ever truly saw more than what he could take. The storm arrived 3 nights later. Thunder cracked like rifle fire, rattling shutters, tearing dust into sheets of rain. Lena woke to a muffled sound, soft cries carrying through the hall. She pulled her shawl tight and followed it. Theo's door was ajar. Inside, the boy was curled under his quilt, fists clenched around his wooden horse, tears streaming silently down his cheeks. His lips formed words, broken fragments that sliced through the quiet. "Mama, don't go. Mama, please come back." Lena froze. Every muscle screamed to step away, but her body moved instead. She knelt at his side, voice low, tender. "I'm here." Theo flinched at her touch at first, then clung to her like a drowning child to driftwood. She wrapped him close, rocking gently, whispering against his hair. "You're safe. I'm not going anywhere tonight." His sobs slowed his breath evened, and finally he slept with his face buried against her shoulder. She remained there until the storm passed her shawl damp with his tears. For the first time in years, someone needed her not as a pawn, not as property, but as arms strong enough to hold grief. At dawn, she sat on the porch with a tin cup of coffee, eyes swollen but steady. Jack joined her silent, as always. After a long pause, he asked Nightmare. She nodded. He was calling for her. Jack's jaw tightened. Hasn't spoken to a soul in 2 years. Her voice faltered, but she forced the words out. "I don't think he was calling for her anymore. I think he meant me." Jack swallowed hard, staring at the horizon where the storm had cleared. Neither spoke after that, but something had shifted. The silence that had once been heavy now held meaning. Over the following weeks, Theo crept closer. Lena read letters to him by the fire, guiding his fingers along each curve of ink. Sometimes he leaned against her arm cheek, resting on her sleeve. She told him stories of her childhood doll with the missing eye of climbing apple trees barefoot until her father scolded her. Theo never answered, but his shoulders loosened, his small body leaning nearer. Jack noticed. He watched Lena tuck quilts tighter around the boy, watched her smile when Theo traced out a word correctly. He saw her fingers twitch nervously when she thought no one noticed, saw her stand at dusk staring at the sky like she was waiting for it to deliver her somewhere else. One evening, as Lena fixed loose boards on the porch, Theo slipped outside and placed the wooden horse in her lap. He said nothing, but his eyes asked a question. She smiled faintly. "I'll mend him tomorrow." Jack stood in the doorway watching. He didn't step forward, didn't speak, but his heart, once locked like a gun barrel, cracked open just enough to let the sight in. And in the fragile stillness of the Mercer homestead, 3 broken lives began weaving themselves together, though none dared to name it yet. By the time midsummer settled, in the brittle fields around Cinder Creek, baked to dust and whispers carried across the town like thorns on the wind. Randall Pike had not forgotten the auction. Men like him never did. Wealth gave him power. Cruelty gave him appetite, and when both were bruised in public revenge, followed like a shadow. It was late afternoon when hooves pounded up the dirt road leading to the Mercer ranch. From the window, Lena spotted 4 riders approaching Pike at their lead. Her breath caught. She turned sharply. "Jack," she whispered, urgency burning through her voice. "They're coming." Jack was already reaching for his hat, his jaw tight. Theo clutched Lena's skirt, eyes wide. She crouched beside him, placing a steadying hand on his shoulder. "Stay inside. No matter what you hear, do not open the door." The boy nodded, trembling, and slipped back into the shadows of the hall. Jack stepped onto the porch, his boots silent against the packed dirt. His rifle hung on the post nearby, but he left it untouched. Hands loose at his sides, he walked to the gate. Pike pulled his reins sharply, bringing his horse to a halt just beyond the fence line. "Well, well," he drawled, his grin as thin as a blade. "Thought I'd check in. Seems you still got something that belongs to me." Jack didn't move. "She's not a thing." Laughter rolled from Pike's men. One of them, younger and twitchier than the rest, slid his hand toward the grip of his revolver. Pike spat to the side. "I paid fair. You tossed down a coin like some back alley joke. You think $1 makes her yours." Jack's gaze never wavered. "She's not mine. She's free. But she's here, and I won't let you take her." The young gunman edged his horse forward, eyes darting nervously. "Boss, let's just drag her out." From behind the door, Lena tightened her grip on Theo's hand. The boy's little fingers shook against hers. Jack took one slow step forward, letting his right hand brush the top of his holster. He didn't draw. His voice was quiet, steady. "If you want to try, you better shoot fast. But know this, there's a little boy behind that door who's already buried one parent. You want him to bury another, you go on and test your hand." Silence dropped heavy. The young gunman swallowed hard, his fingers slipping back from his revolver. Pike's grin faltered, his eyes narrowing. "You threatening me, Mercer?" Jack shook his head once. "No, just telling you what's at stake." The air stretched taut. Dust swirled around hooves. Finally, Pike sneered, jerked his reins, and turned his horse. "Ain't worth the trouble?" The others hesitated, but followed the youngest last to leave his gaze, never daring to meet Jack's again. Only when the dust had settled did Lena push the door open, stepping out with Theo behind her. She said nothing, just stood beside Jack at the gate their silence shared. That night, another storm rose, this one inside the house. Lena had gone to bed early, complaining of a chill. Hours later, Jack found her curled in sweat-damp sheets, fever burning through her skin. The lamp flickered low beside her, a basin of cold water half spilled on the floor. "Lena," he murmured, shaking her gently, "wake up." Her eyes opened glassy and unfocused. "I'm fine," she whispered. "No, you're not." He fetched fresh water, soaked a cloth, and pressed it to her forehead. She shivered, teeth chattering despite the heat. Jack sat beside her, took her trembling hand in his, and rubbed warmth back into her fingers. Minutes stretched into hours. Outside, rain lashed the roof. Thunder rattled the shutters. Inside, Jack stayed steady as stone. At last, Lena stirred, eyes clouded but searching. "Why are you still here?" He swallowed, voice rough. "Because I haven't met a woman like you since Mary. And because I never thought I could need someone again. Not until I saw the way Theo looks at you." Her eyes welled. Without meaning to, her fingers curled into his. He leaned forward, brushing his lips against hers. Soft, hesitant, born of longing and pain. A kiss, not of conquest, but of survival. But before it could deepen, she turned her face away, tears streaking her cheeks. "I can't," she whispered. "Every time I let myself get close, it disappears. It burns me, leaves me alone." Jack brushed damp hair from her forehead. His voice was low, certain. "I'm not going anywhere." She shook her head weakly. "They all say that." He said nothing more. He stayed through the storm, through the fever, his hand wrapped around hers until dawn broke golden across the wooden floor. When morning came, her skin was cooler, her breathing steady. Their hands were still joined. Yet the kiss, its ache, its truth, hung heavy in the room like smoke after fire. And Lena, caught between the warmth of belonging and the terror of loss, could not decide whether it was salvation or a trap waiting to close. The storm that night had left the air heavy damp with memory and fear. Lena woke before dawn, her body sore, but her fever broken. Jack was gone from her bedside, though his presence still lingered like warmth pressed into the quilt. On the table lay a folded sheet of paper weighed down by a smooth stone, her name written on the outside in his rough hand. She opened it, her heart lurching with every word. You don't have to decide now, but know this, you matter to us, to him, to me. Stay if you will, go if you must. I won't chain you. The words should have comforted her. Instead, they sliced open a wound she'd kept closed. Freedom meant choice, and choice terrified her more than shackles ever had. Because what if she chose wrong again? By midday, the fear won. Lena packed lightly bread-dried meat water, enough for a day's walk. She left a note on the kitchen table, her hand trembling with every line. Jack, what you and Theo have is good. Whole. I don't belong in something that pure. Thank you for giving me a home, even if it was never mine to keep. She slipped from the porch quietly, boots scuffing against dry earth, and walked past the fences she had helped repair. She did not look back. Inside the house, Jack found the note, his jaw tightened, breath sharp. He searched Theo's room for comfort, but the bed was empty. Panic flooded him. He tore through the barn, the coop, the shed, nothing. Then behind the orchard, he saw them 2 sets of small prints leading down the hill, only one set coming back. Damn it, he hissed, grabbing his coat and rifle. The rain returned suddenly, sharp and cold, stinging his face. He called out into the storm. Lena, Theo's gone. Her heart dropped at the shout, her feet already pounding back up the hill. What do you mean gone? She cried, breath ragged. They met in the open, both soaked eyes wide with fear. He's not in the house, not anywhere. The hill, Lena gasped. The oak tree. He goes there alone sometimes. They ran without speaking, mud sucking at their boots. Lightning flashed, thunder cracked, until at last the oak loomed over the valley. There at its base sat Theo, soaked to the bone knees, drawn to his chest, clutching a fistful of crushed wildflowers. Lena dropped to her knees, wrapping him tight. Theo, what are you doing out here? You'll freeze. The boy trembled violently, but did not release the flowers. He turned to her eyes, red lips quivering. If you leave, he whispered hoarsely, I don't want to stay here. Not without you. The words tore through her. Rain streaked her cheeks, mingling with tears she no longer fought. Oh, baby, she murmured, pulling him close. I wasn't leaving you. I thought I was protecting you. I thought you'd be better without me. Theo clung harder, burying his face in her neck. You're the only one who makes the house not sad anymore. Jack stood a few feet away, chest-heaving hands, hanging helpless at his sides. His eyes met Lena's. Her voice cracked as she said, I didn't think I mattered this much. You do, Jack answered quietly, his words carrying to both of them, to both of us. The 3 stayed beneath the tree until the rain softened to mist, until fear gave way to something deeper. When at last they stood, Lena took Theo's hand in one of hers, and with the other she reached for Jack's. Without words, they walked home together. That night by lamplight, Lena unfolded a letter sealed with the federal crest. Her hands shook as she read. A United States Marshal has arrived in Cinder Creek to investigate unlawful transactions involving women, including the auction in which you were sold. You are required to testify. Jack listened in silence, his jaw hard. They're calling it trafficking, Lena said softly. They want me to confess or to stand witness. Jack rose, took his hat from the peg. Then we'll ride into town tomorrow. Together. For the first time since the stage in Cinder Creek, Lena did not feel like property, nor even a fugitive. She felt like something rarer, a woman chosen and choosing in return. The morning sun cast long, sharp shadows as Jack, Lena, and Theo rode into Cinder Creek. The town, usually loud with saloon laughter and wagon wheels, seemed hushed. Eyes followed them from porches and doorways, whispers trailing in their wake. The woman once mocked in chains now rode upright, chin steady, with a boy clutching her waist and a man riding silent at her side. The old saloon had been stripped of whiskey barrels and poker tables, converted into a makeshift hearing hall. Rows of wooden chairs lined the walls. A chalkboard bore the names of witnesses. At the front, behind a desk, stood United States Marshal Ethan Grady, uniform crisp silver trim, catching the light. His gaze swept the room as Lena entered, and a ripple of recognition rolled through the crowd. "That's her," someone whispered. "The girl from the stage." Jack's boots echoed on the boards as he guided her forward. They stopped before the marshal. Grady's voice was firm, official. "Miss Caldwell, you were sold at public auction 3 months ago. Are you here of your own will?" Lena opened her mouth, but Jack stepped forward, his voice steady. "I'll speak." The marshal raised an eyebrow. "And you are?" "Jack Mercer, rancher, the man who put down the coin." Murmurs rose behind them. Jack's words carried unflinching. "Yes, I paid. 1 coin, but not to own her. I paid to stop Randall Pike from dragging her into hell. She came with me because I gave her a choice. If that makes me guilty, I'll take the charge. But don't punish her, and don't touch my boy." For the first time since his mama died, he smiles again because she's with us. The room stilled. Grady leaned back, studying him. "You realize what you're admitting to?" Jack's jaw tightened. "I do. And I know the law's got no business condemning the only decent thing that's happened to this woman in years." From the back, a cane tapped against the floor. Agnes Fowler stood, her voice firm. "Lena Caldwell is no criminal. She's more a member of this town than half the men who jeered that day." Another voice followed. A farmer near the wall rose. "She saved my daughter from a snake bite. Wouldn't take a penny for it." A third joined. "She teaches my boys letters behind the church every Sunday." One by one, voices rose. "She cleaned graves no one else visits. Brought food when my wife fell ill." The same townsfolk who once cheered her humiliation now stood in her defense. Marshal Grady scanned the room, then lowered his papers. "Well, seems I've heard enough." He stood. "No charges will be filed. Miss Caldwell, you're free. And Mr. Mercer, stubborn as you are, I've seen worse." A ripple of laughter broke the tension. Lena turned toward Jack, lips trembling, not yet smiling, but alive with something new, hope. Outside, daylight flooded the street. Instead of sneers, townsfolk reached out hands, some to shake hers, some to clap Jack on the shoulder. Theo clutched Lena's hand tightly, his wooden horse tucked beneath his arm. For the first time, Cinder Creek didn't feel like a place she had survived. It felt like a place she might belong. Weeks later, the far edge of Mercer land bloomed with wildflowers, goldenrod paintbrush daisies dancing beneath the open sky. Years before, Jack had buried his wedding ring beneath the mesquite tree. There, grief pressing the soil flat. Now the place was dressed in cloth banners and garlands of sage. A small circle of neighbors' gathered faces, once cruel, now softened. Lena walked across the grass, her dress plain but radiant in the sun, her hair loose, a crown of woven herbs resting light. No veil, no bouquet, only Theo's hand in hers. In his palm was a carved wooden box, sleeves of his shirt rolled too high for his growing arms. At the tree, Jack waited, eyes guarded yet softened by something deeper. Lena's voice wavered but held. I used to think I had no say in where I belonged, that I'd always be taken past given. But this time no one bought me. No one forced me. I'm here because I want to be. I choose you, Jack. I choose Theo. I choose this. Jack's rough voice cracked. And my boy chose you long before I ever found the words. Theo stepped forward, opened the small box. Inside lay 2 silver bands, simple but true. Jack slid one onto Lena's finger, and she did the same for him. No preacher spoke, no sermon filled the air, only the land, the sky, and the truth binding them. When their lips met, Theo clapped once, and laughter rippled through the circle. Later they shared food under the mesquite tree. Children played in tall grass. Neighbors lingered in quiet respect. Lena sat against the trunk, Theo's head in her lap, Jack's hand wrapped around hers. It wasn't a grand wedding, but it was honest. As the sun dipped behind the hills, casting gold across the plains, Lena whispered to the wind, "This time I am not someone's burden. I am someone's choice." Where once there had been chains and shame, now there was earth roots and something finally free. True love is never about possession, but about choice, the courage to stand, the grace to forgive, and the strength to belong without chains. Lena's story reminds us that dignity can be stolen, but it can also be reclaimed when hearts choose each other freely. If this story touched you, share it with someone who still believes in second chances. Leave a comment below with your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories of love, redemption, and the quiet power of courage. Because out here, where dust settles but hope rises, love always leaves its mark.